Plans have changed with the Datsun. The 2JZ's coming back out. Stick around and I'll explain why. What's going on, guys? Brian back here at Block Garage, and we're working on the 280Z again. So for those of you guys who don't know, we rebuilt this car completely, did a ton of rust repair over the last year plus. Time for the 2JZ swap so we can get this thing running. We put it in a few weeks ago, something like that. We're planning on running it with the stock intake manifold, stock harness, adapting it to the 280Z. That is not happening anymore. But that's not why we're taking the 2JZ back out. So once I got this in here, realized just how ugly this setup is with the stock intake manifold, because remember, this is a non-turbo 2JZ. It's a VVT-I, so it's a 2JZ GE VVT-I, non-turbo. Came in a 2003 Lexus GS300. It uses this ugly intake manifold setup here instead of the nice forward-facing intake manifold on the GTE. We could make it work. It would work just fine, but it's ugly. The stock ECU is not tunable, so I want to go to a standalone anyway. Debated back and forth for a while, running the stock intake manifold and throttle body setup NA with a standalone. Realized, what's the point? Why go through all that trouble? So we're going to turbo it. We're going to do, a nice forward-facing intake manifold. We're going to do a standalone harness, ECU, everything. And since this is a GE VVT-I, it has weak rods, weak pistons. You can't run much boost, not much horsepower. So if we're going through all of this trouble, doing all of that stuff to it, I don't want to have those weak rods and pistons in there. I want that block to be basically bulletproof and ready to go. So that's why we're taking the 2JZ back out. We're going to take this whole thing back out. We are going to strip the entire engine down to just the short block, and we're going to bring it to a machine shop. I'm not going with used GTE pistons. We're going to get some aftermarket pistons, aftermarket rods, get everything machined in the block, ready to go. So it'll be basically a brand new short block, and we'd never have to worry about it, hopefully. It'll definitely be strong enough for my power goals. But anyways, we got a lot of work to do. First off, let's get this thing back out of here, get it on an engine stand, and we'll start tearing it apart. All right, we got this thing out. Really wasn't too much trouble. That engine bay is quite big, so it's not a tight squeeze to get it out. But anyways, time to rip this thing apart. We'll probably start taking the accessories off and little stuff like that. Get the head off. So we're down to a short block. So yeah, let's get started. All right, let's get the cam cover off real quick. This does have a fresh timing belt on it that the previous guy who I bought the engine from put on when he rebuilt it. I don't know if we'll stick with it or replace it. I don't know what belt it is right now, if it's a Gates or whatever. We'll check it out when we get to that point. Pop the upper timing cover off. Pop the alternator off next, I guess. That's good for it. Probably going to get a new alternator anyway. Just because I got no idea whether this is any good or not. I suppose we can pop the Apex engine mounts off too real quick. Guess I got these on plenty tight. All right, let's take some of this stuff off. We got a hard line right here that runs up to the VVTi solenoid and down here on the block. And we got a water neck here, and we got the oil filter housing. Oh, there's another bolt. Now when I can, I'm going to put the bolts and nuts back where they came from. Just it makes it easier, but any of the other stuff that can't stay, like especially everything on the block has to come off. I'm bagging it and labeling it over there just so we know where everything goes when it goes back together. The head is not going to the machine shop, so I don't have to worry about, you know, leaving stuff on there unless I want to take it off. It looks like this oil filter housing is only held on by one stud nut. That doesn't make any sense. We'll see if it comes apart. Well, that didn't work at all. I'm going to see if we take I'm assuming that's oil pressure sensor right here. There's a big nut behind it. See if that comes off when we do that. That was the answer. Wow, it's got a massive banjo bolt. Massive banjo bolt. That bolts that onto the block. I'm not sure what the stud's for. Maybe just to make sure it stays aligned. Yeah, probably so it makes sure it stays aligned. So it's not, you don't put it on like this or something. Got a couple knock sensors right here that have to come off. Done over here, it looks like. I don't see anything else remaining over here. Let's go to the other side, I guess. Okay, we got a bunch of stuff that's going to come off over here. This is the coolant pipe to the heater core. We got some lines over here, coolant lines. That must be coolant return. This is the other coolant line that goes to the heater core. It runs up here to the back of the head. So I could actually leave that on. Yeah, I'll leave that one on because we don't have to worry about that one. Oh, yeah. Let's pop this off real quick. That looks like that's pretty much it over here. That's a coolant drain for the block. So that's going to stay on there. I don't need to take that off. Let's pop this pipe off real quick. Got a little coolant pipe here from the water pump to the head. Assuming that comes off the water pump, it's moving. Yep, just a little stuck. Let's pop off our accessory belt tensioner. Now I believe, I'm pretty sure I already took this crank pulley bolt off already, so it should come off, and I'm pretty sure I had the crank pulley off. So hopefully it's not stuck on there. I'm fairly certain I did. See if it pops out. I'm pretty sure I had this off already. Yeah, it's coming off. You can get a puller in here. There's a couple bolt holes, but it's coming this way. I ain't gonna bother setting that up. Not too bad. All right, we can pop the water pump pulley off, I believe, right now. Maybe. Well, those two don't want to come off. Let's get my impact. Now I guess we can take off the lower timing cover. All right, next we get the timing belt off. To do that, we'll get the tensioner off right here. This does look like it's been replaced. I'm assuming he replaced it when he rebuilt the motor. So I want to try and save it. Probably. I might replace it anyway. But we should be able to just compress it back down in the vise and repin it if we want to reuse it. I don't know. It's probably safer not to. But, I mean, it's brand new. Literally brand new, never been run. So, we'll see. So we can get that off pretty easily. Do I want to time this? Yeah, maybe. I probably should have done it beforehand. I'm going to time it real quick, just for the heck of it. Probably would have been better before I took the belt tensioner off, but we can make it work. Ooh, you know what would actually be easier? We're fighting compression. Let me pop the spark plugs out real quick. Pop the coils off real quick. You know what? I'm going to pop this hose off anyway. It's annoying. Might as well get it out of the way. So if you don't know anything about the ignition system on these 2JZs, these use a waste spark system. Basically, you have 3 coils. Pop these out real quick. So obviously we got 6 cylinders, right? You got 3 coils. See, 1, 2, 3. And all it does is it fires 1 coil to do 2 spark plugs at the same time, even when that other matching cylinder is not ready for the power stroke. That's why they call it waste spark, because you're sending electricity and firing that spark plug on a cylinder that's not ready for the power stroke. It's wasted. It's just a simpler way to do it, cheaper. You only got 3 coils instead of 6. Yeah, let's pop this hose off real quick. Might as well get it out of the way. I hate these clamps. Would help if I had the right tool for them, but you know, is what it is. We can get it. I'll probably put a regular hose clamp on here. All right, now we should be able to spin the engine over a lot easier. There we go, got our timing marks all lined up down here on the crank and up here on the two cam gears, so that should be good to go. Probably unnecessary, but now everything's lined up with number one cylinder on top dead center. So let's pop the timing belt off and go from there. This has got to be one of the simplest timing belt setups. I've done a bunch before, especially like Subaru. My God, they are a pain. All right, let's pop the, well, let's get the tensioner off there real quick. Or the tensioner pulley. So you can see this has been sitting long enough that that pulley's got some surface rust on it. I don't know if it'd be best to probably replace that. Could clean it up probably with a little bit of emery cloth, but I mean, it's for the timing belt. Why risk it, you know? Let's get the water pump off of here. Looks like a whole bunch of 10mm bolts. Actually, that one's behind the timing cover. We might need to take the cam gears off first so we can take this backing plate off. Yep. I would say we have to do that. I'm gonna have to look up, ooh. Hopefully I didn't have to break that free first. The cam gear bolts. I should be able to get that as long as I got the right size Allen socket. All right, so I looked it up real quick. I don't want to mess this stuff up. So we're gonna take this off real quick first. It's a 14mm Allen. And then there's another, I believe, 10mm Allen they said on the backside that actually holds this on to the end of the camshaft. You do not want to remove these 5 bolts here because then the pulley itself separates. And you supposedly can put it back together, but they also recommend that you just replace it if you do that. So we want to get that off, but you want to be able to hold the camshaft from spinning. The easiest way is to put a wrench on the camshaft. So we're going to pop the valve covers off real quick because those have to come off anyway. The other option is we could put the timing belt back on, you know, just wrap it around and hold it. I've done that before, but let's do it the proper way. Pop the valve covers off and hold the cam with a wrench. Just pop both of them off for the heck of it. All right, so you can see right here, there's a hex on both of them, so you can hold that from spinning with a wrench. Now we should be able to just pop this right off. If you guys need this, it is a 14 on the outside here. And then a 10 on the inside. Keep dropping that thing. I believe this will slide right off. Maybe. Thought it would pop right off. Go easy with this. Yeah, there we go. Obviously don't want to pry on that too hard because you could break that cam gear pretty easily. So yeah, this is how the VVTi works on the 2JZ. This is your solenoid here. It gets oil pressure from the pump out of that hard line coming out of the block that we took out earlier. Activated obviously with the electrical switch from the ECU, but basically sends oil pressure through the solenoid here. I'm assuming this solenoid can vary the amount of oil pressure it sends through, but it goes through into the cam, and then there's some holes in the end of the cam here that go into here. Probably you guys probably can't see it, but there's a hole in there. So when oil pressure goes into here, it's going to change basically the timing of the intake valves. This will rotate a little bit on the end of the camshaft, so you change the timing of the intake valves. So that helps you have the right timing of your intake for good low end torque and better flow up top. Best of both worlds. A lot of companies have different variable valve timing, like VTEC with Honda. This is just how Toyota does it. And we'll pop the exhaust cam gear off real quick. All right, we can get back to what we were doing over here. Let's take this cover off real quick. Now we can take the water pump off, I believe. This bolt ain't even tight. I don't know if any of these are tight. Good thing we're messing with it. 12 mil bolts are tight. All right, didn't expect the whole thing to come off. So that takes both of these halves off. I expected the other one to stay, but apparently not. This is two separate pieces. This is the water pump that you'd replace. Your impeller is going to be in here. This is just the water pump housing. And I expected that this would stay on the block, but it's bolted through these bolts right through the block. All right, so we got to take the oil pump off the front next. However, to do that, we got to take the oil pan off first, or at least it'd be easier. So since we get the engine up this way, let's get the head off, which means we got to start with the cams. All right, back up here to the cams. We're going to get these off. Now, you do want to take these off in the proper order, your cam caps here, because these cams, I do believe, from what I've read, are hollow, and they can break. So what we want to do is get our front cam caps off, the VVTi solenoid cap and the other cam cap on the other side. And then there's a certain sequence to loosening the other ones, because you don't want to just remove one, because then you got pressure all over the place. And you could break the cam. So let's try that. Let's get these front cam caps off real quick. Oop, looks like I gotta get those off. Let's stick these back in. I didn't notice this, but there's two little Allen bolts here, and I don't want all the pressure going to be on them. We'll stick these bolts back in. Get these two little Allen bolts out real quick. Definitely don't need to be breaking stuff on the head if we can help it. These things are tiny, tiny, tiny. All right, now let's get these two bolts up out front. And while we're here, we'll take the two bolts out of the other side. All right, let's see if these things pop off. So that's your VVTi solenoid right there. That's the actual solenoid right there, which looks like it is removable from this housing. you know, right here. Take that bolt off. But that's your cam cap up front for the VVTi solenoid. And you can see there's ports right there sending oil in and out, I would assume, to that front, well, into the cam right here, and then out here to your cam gear. This stuff here is all new to me. I mentioned it before in previous videos, but I know most about GM stuff, LS specifically. So Toyota stuff's all new to me, which is kind of part of the point of this project. Why I went with a 2JZ over, you know, just putting in an LS, which would have been easier and I'm finding out cheaper. But we're gonna stick with the plan. So anyways, now what we want to do is we got the number 1 caps off. We got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 because you got 6 cylinders. So what we want to do is go to, trying to remember here, 3, 6, 4, 7, 5, 2 was what it said. And we're, like I said before, we're not going to take them all the way out right now. We're going to loosen them a bit at a time. So 3, 6, 4, 7, 5, and 2. Yep, now our spring pressure from our valves moved that up some. So now we can keep going. So let's go back to, what did we say, 3? That one's all nice and loose. Get that one right out of the way. Exhaust. Okay, and these are labeled. Because if you're ever taking stuff like this apart, they have to go back in the same place that they were and the same orientation because they wear in. If you don't, stuff's either going to be too loose of a tolerance, too tight of a tolerance, and you're going to mess your motor up. You can see these are stamped with an arrow pointing forward, E for exhaust, 3 for the number 3 cam cap. So 3, 6, 4. Let's get a little pressure on it. 7. And 5. Let's get a little more on 2 also. I think we're good. And the cam pops right out. So let's take a look at this real quick, because I have not. There's definite wear on the cam lobes. There's no scratches that I see or anything like that, or excessive wear. But you can tell we got a golden color down here, and up here on the lobe itself it is silvery. So there's definite wear there. I don't see anything alarming. Same thing on where cam caps ride. I don't see anything alarming there. We'll do a definite thorough inspection though. This one's looking pretty much the same. I don't see any big scratches or anything. You got some RTV up there. Maybe lose a little bit less when we put it back together around the cam cap up front, because you do have to RTV that so it doesn't leak. We don't want that getting stuck on our VVTi solenoid or cam gear rather. So I don't see anything alarming on this one either. That's good. Kind of bad actually, because if there was something bad, we could have an excuse to buy some aftermarket cams, but I'm not gonna worry about that right now. So this is definitely very strange to me. There's no rockers, there's no push rods. What we have is valve buckets. So they sit right on here. This is what your cam lobe pushes on. You can see it actually rotates in the bucket. And then this side sits right down over the valve spring, pushes on the end of the valve right there. Here's our valve. It just sits down in there like that. better for high RPM, not having push rods and rockers, just because you're not changing angles like that. Not a lot of deflection like you could get in push rods, but yeah, definitely different for me. I'm gonna leave the buckets in here for now though. I'm not planning on taking the valves out. I might end up taking the valves out. So since we're not doing that, the next step is to take the head off, and there's some important information with that. All right, so this is important if you're taking the head off 2JZ. You see our head bolts down in there? They might look like a Torx. They are not a Torx. They are a 10mm by hex. What did I do with it? Right here. So you need to buy one of these 10mm by hex. It is different than a Torx socket. You do not want to use a Torx socket. That is how people round them off, strip them, and then you're screwed. You got to figure out a way to get them out of there. But that's what we're going to do, is take all of them out. Now, generally, your motor's probably old, used, been run a bunch, and where did my pick go? I keep setting stuff down and forget where I put it. No. Oh, I put it in my pocket. That's why it's not on the bench. So what you'd want to do is make sure you clean all the junk out of here, because it will harden. There's actually some in there right now, actually. Not much. Hopefully he didn't reuse the head bolts. I would hope not. But anyways, we won't be. So you'd want to clean that out, maybe spray it with some brake clean, but make sure you get all that crap out so that you can get your bit all the way down in there. You want as much of a bite on them as you can so that you don't strip them, because that's what happens with people. They strip these. So we're going to make sure these are all clean and ready to go, and then I'll show you the proper removal sequence. I think he reused these head bolts. These are supposed to be torque to yield. You're not supposed to reuse these. You should always replace your head studs, bolts, unless they're ARP. If we went with ARP, those don't need to be replaced because they are not torque to yield. That's one benefit of getting ARP bolts, which I will be using. But anyways, let's see how tough these are to break free. Not too bad. This makes me think of watching the I Do Cars YouTube channel. I watch him quite a bit, removing or pulling apart destroyed engines. I'm sure a bunch of people do. He's got a lot of subscribers. New. A lot of times you get that nice satisfying pop when these pop free, but I'm assuming since these have not been used, this engine has not been run since it was reassembled, that's probably why these aren't. Let's zoom through and get these all off. And, you know, speaking of the I Do Cars, hopefully we do not have any malice in the combustion palace. I don't believe we do. He wouldn't have put that back together with stuff destroyed. At least I would hope not, right? But anyways. There we go, all popped free. Looking how these bolts are in here, I can see why people struggle with stripping them if you're not using the right socket. Always use the right tools, but also why people say that putting ARP head studs are a pain. Trying to get that washer and that nut down in there with the ARP lube and all that stuff. Makes sense now. Now since this hasn't been run, it shouldn't be too hard to get the head off the block, but we'll see. It shouldn't be stuck. Oh no, come right off. Oh, we'll do a quick inspection on here. a little tiny bit of stuff on the, that's exhaust valves. Intake exhaust. Well, it looks clean in there. I wonder if he had this machined. Because that head looks awfully clean. Not just the surface here, but the whole head compared to how the block looks. I'm wondering if he had this thing machined and cleaned and everything. Wow, there's still some shit on there though. Oh. The valves have definitely been cleaned, the intake. You can see a bit of pitting in them. We'll do a good inspection though, at some point. Not for right now though. He definitely cleaned in here. Top of the pistons have been cleaned off. It doesn't look like the block got machined at all, I don't think. This, you know, if you decked the block, it definitely would be cleaner than this. But I don't see anything crazy. I'm not going to bother spinning the engine over right now. We got to take this all apart, and we'll check out the cylinder walls at that point, just to see what it looks like. But now that we got the head off, let's take the oil pan off so we can get the oil pump off, and that's pretty much it. Going to be leaving the crank in it. Yeah, let's flip it over. Well, let's take this oil pan off for the third time at this point. So the first time was when we converted to a rear sump pan. Second time was when I found out that, well, we ended up wasting money at this point, but I found out that he had reused the main cap bolts and the rod bolts, which you do not do because they are torque to yield. So that's a waste of money at this point, but does not matter because we will be putting ARP bolts in. And now the third time that we can take it to the machine shop. So let's just zip through this again. And we got our oil pump pickup and our windage tray that's going to come out. And we'll pop the upper oil pan off again. There we go. Make sure you don't just pry up on one edge though. Try to break it free all the way around as much as you can, because you don't want to crack this. These things are not cheap. Especially the rear sumps, that's what most people want. The front sumps you can usually get fairly cheap from what I've seen, but the rear sumps, no. So I did make some money back, you know, by selling my front sump, but not what I paid for this. Just is what it is. So while we got the engine upside down, we're going to pop the connecting rod bolts off real quick. See these brand new bolts that we just put in, I don't know, a month and a half ago, something like that. I don't remember when it's been, but here's what it is. These are OEM replacement. I did not buy ARPs when I did this because they are not needed. But anyways, let's pop these off. Jeez, I torqued those down pretty good. Let's break those loose with my breaker bar. I need to be breaking that thing. Getting no satisfying pop, but it is what it is. There we go. So even though these bolts are brand new, if we wanted to reuse them, we could not because they are torque to yield. They have been stretched, and we should not be using them. So if you didn't see the video when I actually replaced these bolts, these are brand new bearings. I didn't put them in, the other guy did that I bought the engine from. Have not been run, but they will not be used now. Quite a bit of skirt wear there. Oh, he wrote 3 on there. But anyways. This is just not working for me. Probably not the best idea, but I'm not reusing this stuff. The only thing I'd be worried about is scratching the crank. That hopefully doesn't need to be machined, but we'll see. Come on, baby. Alright, we're going to pop this rear cover off. I think it'd be easier to do with the engine upside down like this. Bit tough. I don't say tough, but a bit annoying because it's on the engine stand. Oh, what the heck, is this bolt rounded off or something? A little tough to get in there with the engine stand in the way, but we got it. Be a little gentle with this. It's held on by RTV, I imagine. It is aluminum and you do not want to break it. Held on by a couple dowel pins also. Well, lined up with a couple dowel pins. So just work it off slow, because if you don't, you flex it too much, you definitely could crack it. There. So it's pretty thin, pretty small, so just be easy with it. There's our seal spring. Looks like all we got left is the oil pump, I believe. We'll get our timing belt gear off there. Looks like it's mostly 12 bolts. I don't think this one holds anything, holds it on. No, that definitely does not. Well, no, that definitely does not hold that on. I'm not exactly sure what that's for. Kind of covers a little slot right there. We will just put it back for now. I am going to be getting a new oil pump. This one was not replaced, and I'm pretty sure this thing is pretty high mileage. If I'm doing all this work, I'm definitely not reusing an old oil pump. I believe that's everything. Anything else? I'm going to leave that one in there just barely, because once again this is held on with RTV, and I'm going to have to pry it off. Don't need it going flying. Just using a quick little putty knife, chisel, whatever you want to call this thing. Not a chisel, but anyways, it works pretty good. You just tap it in between there, break the seal, and then it'll come right off. Can be hard to get stuff that's RTV'd together well apart. Alright, that ain't gonna fall off on me, I don't think. Which actually probably wouldn't anyway, because it's over the crank, but whatever. So that's the actual oil pump right there. Oil pump gear is obviously splined to the crank. You can see all the varnish on this. It's quite high miles, I'm pretty sure. I could see it in the block and in the old oil pan too. But the plan was to run it. The plan is not to run it anymore. Alright, we are all apart. It is ready to go to the machine shop. I'm keeping the crank in because he's going to need the crank. You obviously reuse the crank. These cranks on these two JZs are forged. You don't need to do anything with them. Those will take, unless you're making a ton of horsepower, which we are not. I'm talking like, I don't know, 1500 plus. I'm not exactly sure, but I know that those cranks are forged, very strong, and I'm not going to need to touch it. It might need to be polished by the machine shop. I'm not sure. I'm going to let him make that call. But let's take a peek inside these cylinder walls. It's since I'm pretty sure, like I said, this is a pretty high mileage motor based on what the interior looks like, or the inside of the block. Now, I mean, going through here, I'm not sure how good you guys can see. That's kind of where I got the light, but anyways, it honestly doesn't look that bad. I can still see some, oh yeah, it's still cross-hatching, and it's possible, it is possible that when he rebuilt this thing, he ran a hone through it, you know, just a dingleberry hone, to clean it up. It is possible. I can definitely see some smooth spots on the cylinder walls where the piston skirts would rub. See right there, that one too. Cylinder 3 seems to be the worst, but it's not bad. It's really not bad. You know, there's no pitting, there's no scoring. I don't see anything major. Now, it is definitely possible that these things are out of round. Like I said, I think this is a high mileage motor. So it's definitely possible that they are not very round. It is possible we could get by with just throwing in a set of pistons and rods, but I want to do it right. I don't exactly want to window this block, so then I gotta find another one, and 2JZs are not cheap. This one I got cheap, 500 bucks. I don't know if anybody remembers that. I think I mentioned it when I first picked this thing up, you know, over a year ago, because it would have been fall of 23, shortly after I grabbed the car. Anyways, yeah, I got this thing for 500 bucks, and you know, even though it's a GE VVTi, it's still pretty cheap. It looks to be in good shape. I mean, if I wasn't planning on building this thing, I would just throw it back together as is, you know. But since we're going to be doing all this work, putting all this money in, we're going to take it to the machine shop. We're going to make sure everything is right. So, this thing is ready for the machine shop. It's honestly fun doing this kind of work compared to sheet metal rust repair work. I enjoy this a lot more. You know, we get to see all the internals of the engine, everything. It's just, I like mechanical work like this a lot more than sheet metal work, but I don't hate sheet metal work as much as I used to. Anyways, this thing is ready to go to the machine shop. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this a little bit. You know, like I said, I had fun doing this. It's going to be even more fun when we throw it back together. I'm not 100% sure on what I'm doing for internals. Keeping the stock crank, like I said, upgrading the rods and pistons, ARP bolts, all the way around. I want this block to be bulletproof for what I need it for. I'm hoping like 500-600. I don't need to go more. I don't even need to go 600, to be honest. But I want it to be nice and strong and overbuilt for what I'm used to. I don't want to have to pull it back apart in the future. So it is going to be plenty strong for what I need it for. If anybody's got recommendations on rods and pistons that they like, I want to stick to the 8.5 to 1 compression, stock compression ratio, because I am going to be running pump gas. There's no E85 available around here at all. It is not possible to buy it anywhere near where I live. I have looked many times, so I can't run E85. Gonna be sticking with 93, and I think sticking with 8.5 to 1 compression is the best idea. We can just turn the boost up if we need to. I can do cams at any time. That's not a big deal. But if you guys have recommendations for cams to throw in, I don't think the head needs any work, but I will do a good inspection on that later. You know, we got all those parts when I gotta do something with them, right? Like I mentioned, it looks like that head has had work done to it as far as machine work. It looks too clean to go with this block based on what the interior of this thing looks like. I mentioned a couple times, looks like it's high mileage. So I would assume that thing is ready to go. As far as the head surface, I'll throw a straight edge across it just to see. Probably ought to do that before we take it down to the machine shop, because if it does need work, I'd rather just have him do it. So I'll do that. But yeah, if you got recommendations on cams, if you got recommendations on rods and pistons that I should use, you know, like I mentioned, 500-600, but I want to be safe, so I'd like something that's good for around 1,000. That way I don't have to worry about it. It looks like most people run a stock pump, at least at those power levels. I've also seen that people port them, and you can buy them pre-ported, so I'll probably go that way. But other than that, we'll be good. I mean, if I don't do cams now, it's not a big deal. I'm going to be tuning the car myself. I will have to retune it, but I won't have to pay to retune it again after we put cams in, if that's what happens. We're going to end this one off here. Like I mentioned, hopefully you guys like this stuff, and hopefully you guys find it interesting ripping the motor apart. But yeah, I got a good video next that you Datsun guys will be interested in. New product came out, and we're going to be testing it out. So look forward to that in the next video. You might have seen the box in the background if you're paying attention throughout the video. You probably can't tell what it is, but you might see the company. So anyways, I'm going to end this one off here. Let me know what you guys think. Leave some comments down below. Give me some advice, you 2JZ guys. Anybody that knows anything about 2JZs would like to know now. That way, if I need to change something going forward, I can. Gonna have to buy parts so we're all ready to get this thing back together when it comes back to the machine shop. So we can go crazy on putting this thing together. Oh, and if you guys haven't, pick up a shirt. blockgarage.myspreadshop.com. Everything's available, not just shirts. You get hats, you get a bunch of stuff, coffee mugs, you know, whatever you want basically, and help support me a little bit. Also, I haven't really mentioned this before. If anybody is still sticking around to the end, I do have a Patreon. I don't want to beg people for money, obviously, but I have been asked about supporting the channel, other ways to support me besides just watching the videos or buying a shirt, which would be nice. But if you want to commit to subscribing to my Patreon, I might start uploading some behind the scenes stuff there. I've been thinking about that in the back of my head, but it's kind of, unless I get a good amount of people there, it's kind of feels like useless to do. You know what I mean? Anyways, if you guys might be interested in subscribing to my Patreon, let me know what you'd like to see on there, because I can, like I said, upload some behind the scenes stuff, stuff that wouldn't necessarily make it into a video. Anyways, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and hopefully I see you guys in the next video.